Hi, I'm Jeanette, the Northbound Coach. So glad that you've joined me today as I continue to chat around what does it mean to have a tiny house career. And by tiny house career, what I'm talking about is literally not a tiny house, although have at it. I think tiny houses are fascinating. And if that's how you want to literally play out your career, I think that's a wonderful vision. However, what I mean when I'm talking about a tiny house career is the opportunity to really look at how, particularly when you are in mid to later career stage and are looking to maximize your fulfillment and joy, and that looks a lot like having flexibility and autonomy in how you get your work done, how we can really move to more of a vision of that. And I think about that when I think about tiny houses with the utter flexibility to, really live life in a different way, in a way that really meets your needs and has that flexibility to it. So rather than being stuck with, as I've talked about in the previous videos, this firm foundation that doesn't have movement to it, this idea of jumping onto something that is fresh and can really bring you more of that fulfillment. That's what I mean when I'm talking about a tiny house career. Okay, so this week what I want to chat about is, well, what specifically could that look like? Particularly when we think about it in terms of a portfolio career, which is a term that you may or may not have heard of. But the basic idea with having a portfolio or shifting your, W-2 in the US, full-time employment with one employer built on this, solid foundation that doesn't offer as much flexibility. In fact, increasingly, it may be less and less flexibility when we're talking about return to office and those sorts of things. When we shift to a portfolio career thinking, we're talking about having multiple elements make up a portfolio of career pieces. So it's not attaching to a full-time W-2 role. There might be a component of W-2 employment in it. So let's talk about what those components could look like, and we'll start there. So if we're thinking about an element of a portfolio career, one piece of it might be being employed by an employer, but in a part-time capacity. So maybe it's 20 hours a week, maybe it's 10 hours a week, something that provides some sort of a foundation of income coming in an area that is consistent with your interest and your expertise. You are a good candidate for this when you have a portfolio of other options that can equal to the compensation level that you need to have coming in at this stage of your career. So when you have other elements in your portfolio, that means you can consider part-term or part-time employment on either a continuing term or a fixed term. So with an end to it, a temporary sort of a thing in a W-2 employment situation. In other words, you're an employee of an organization. And that's a good thing because, not everybody can consider it. So when you think about the shrinking level of competition for it, there are fewer candidates that would be interested in having that. And the reason that you can take it is because you have the portfolio, other components. Okay, so that's one component. Another component could be taking a piece of your experience and your expertise that you want, the work that you like to do, and building more on it from a contract perspective. So in this situation, you're not going to be employed by somebody else, but you will be contracted with them. So that means you have you have to take care of making sure that you put money aside to pay for taxes and so forth, because you're not an employee, you are a contractor. And so in this way, you might pick up various aspects of your expertise and background. For instance, if I take my experience, I have experience that suggests building work around coaching specifically as a skill set, but I also have organization development, learning and development, leadership, those sorts of things that I can also pick up in contract sorts of ways. Now, the audience for your contract work could be different. So if we take the audience for, what you've been doing within your organization, and you think about how could I sell that to other organizations, then you're going to be in a business to business sort of a setting. So you're doing business not with an individual, but with an organization. If you think about breaking it down into individual pieces where you're going to sell directly to a consumer, then it would be a business because you have the business as a contractor to a consumer. So that might be me reaching out directly to have one-on-one coaching clients, for instance. You might also think about that from a contract perspective. So even if the individual is the consumer, you might do that under the contract of some other organization that is employing, based on your skill set, contractors to put their product out there. So there's lots of options in that category. And then, of course, there's the option of giving more of your time to some of your passion projects and so forth, maybe even considering as part of your portfolio pro bono work. So essentially free, where you might be supporting a nonprofit organization, you might be putting something out there that you want to test for building contract work and so forth. And so that might be a piece of it. When we think about the contract capability or opportunities within your portfolio, you might consider organizing them under the structure of a business or a business structure, such as putting your name out on a limited liability company and so forth. And there are various reasons why that could be a beneficial direction to go and something that you want to think about. So there's lots of parts and pieces that go into the portfolio, and then all together they form the various pieces of the pie, and all together you have that full-time employment represented in the pie. And of course, that brings a lot of flexibility in how you look at doing that. I would be happy to spend some time with you if you want to pursue these ideas, do a little bit of brainstorming together. I'll put a link in the description box for a free, complimentary, no strings attached, one-on-one time where we can explore that a little bit further. I'd be happy to do that with you. All right, that's what I have for this week. I'll be back next time as we continue to pursue what does it look like to have a tiny house career. Until then, have a great week. I'm grateful that you've joined me today, and do take care.